I saw FanTheDeck's video about how he was wrong about certain aspects of the Steam Deck, so I was totally inspired by that video to talk about how I was wrong about certain aspects of the Steam Deck as well, mostly predictions. These are a list of some of my L's. The first thing I got wrong was the whole anti-cheat situation. For those not in the know, sometime in 2021, Easy Anti-Cheat and BadLight partnered up with Valve to bring their anti-cheat solutions to Linux, and also by extension the Steam Deck. Prior to this announcement, you could count the number of EAC and BadLight games playable on Linux on one hand, probably. Valve made it sound so easy too, and I even read the Steamworks page on this whole anti-cheat stuff, and they made it sound really easy there too. Apparently just a matter of copying some files and flipping a switch, right? And apparently in the case of BadLight, you only needed to email your BadLight rep. Sounds easy, right? Well, obviously nothing's ever as easy as it seems. And I too hate backseat devs that claim that X or Y is easy when they aren't. My prediction was fairly simple. I believed that smaller titles with anti-cheats would take up this opportunity to enable their anti-cheats for SteamOS. There was another prediction too. I firmly believed that Destiny 2 would be playable on Steam Deck on SteamOS. There was only one quote-unquote piece of evidence that's still found in Bungie's API if you look at light.gg, introduced during the season of the Splicer, season 14 of Destiny 2. It's an emblem that looks like a proton, and it's called Portable Power. I mean, come on, what else could that be referring to? I asked the lore daddies of Destiny 2, and I got no response, period. Unfortunately, Bungie went the opposite direction of what I was expecting. Bungie not only did not enable Steam Deck support, but they outright said that they would not support Steam Deck unless you had Windows installed. What a massive bummer, like for real. I've never felt so betrayed, so wronged, despite the fact that Bungie never outright said that they would support the Steam Deck. I don't know, I just felt so betrayed. On to the next thing. The next thing I want to talk about that I got wrong was the verification system. For a time, I certainly believed that the verification system that Valve put down would be the end-all be-all of compatibility, outside of using ProtonDB to get unsupported games working. Turns out, there's a numerous amount of flaws in the verification system. There could be any number of reasons for this happening. But, of course, at the end of the day, it's all Valve's responsibility. The two most egregious issues I've seen are unsupported games blatantly working on Steam Deck, sometimes even perfectly, and games that are marked as verified not working as expected. In this Twitter thread, Liam from Gaming on Linux discusses his issues with God of War being verified as well as stability issues. Enough for him to say that this game shouldn't be marked as verified. And I agree. A game shouldn't have this many stability issues if it's marked as verified by Valve. And the fact that God of War crashes the entire Steam Deck really makes it not worthy of being verified, in my opinion. Sony ought to fix this issue because at the end of the day, it's their game. Of course, this isn't the only issue with the verification system. There are way more issues. The most difficult part about this whole thing is the fact that games change. Heck, Proton itself changes as well. There are over 50,000 non-VR titles on Steam. Let's say Proton gets a substantial update. There would be games that would need to be tested again. Imagine potentially doubling the workload. My favorite example is DBZ Kakarot, a game that was tested in February of 2022. It was marked as unsupported, and I believe back then the game straight up did not work on Steam Deck. But now the game works on Steam Deck perfectly, with no tweaks too if the ProtonDB entries are to be believed. And yet the game is still marked as unsupported. There's also the fact that games do in fact get updates. Some get multiple DLCs, and some get quality of life updates. But then you have the multiplayer juggernauts that get multiple different updates throughout its entire lifespan. Is Valve going to have to test every single time a game gets an update? I would hope not, right? So another thing I got wrong was Switch emulation on Steam Deck. I was a skeptic, and back then, I didn't believe that the Steam Deck would be capable of emulating the Switch. I always figured it would be just that, a meme. But I was wrong. It's become an ascended meme. Switch games can be emulated at playable frame rates. Now, to be fair, some of the more higher-end Switch games still don't run great on Steam Deck, but you have games like Mario Odyssey running fairly well on Steam Deck. Furthermore, there's no telling how much better games could be running in the future. Developers for emulators like Ryujinx and Yuzu are always optimizing and making games run better and better than ever. But for Breath of the Wild, definitely play the Wii U version. I've even got a guide for modding the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild on Steam Deck. Another thing I got wrong, like Fan the Deck, was the Steam Deck's AAA capabilities. I firmly believed that this device would not be capable of playing AAA titles, at least not that well. I certainly wasn't expecting to be able to play Cyberpunk 2077 at all. But you can run Cyberpunk at playable frame rates, more than playable frame rates if I do say so myself. And all of this was before the Steam Deck preset updates and the FSR2 updates. In fact, most of the AAA titles I've played on my Steam Deck I haven't touched on my main PC at all. Like, yeah, sure, I'm not playing these games at max settings on 1440p at over 100 FPS, but you know what? I don't miss any of that when I play AAA titles on my Steam Deck. Of course, this is just AAA titles of today. That said, recently there was a string of modern AAA releases that run poorly on Steam Deck. Games like Forspoken, Returnal, Wild Hearts. Some of these games do have issues on PC as well, but these issues are more prevalent on Steam Deck due to the fact that, well, the Steam Deck isn't like a super top-of-the-line modern gaming PC, you know? You want to know something else I got wrong? I thought that more developers would actively target the Steam Deck beyond just them making sure the game runs on Steam Deck. My thought process was very simple. Aside from storage capacity, most unmodified Steam Decks have the same hardware, same processor, same amount of RAM, same RAM speeds, you know. And in theory, this makes the Steam Deck more akin to like a console. I mean, every PS5 performs the same, right? My thought was that developers would actively target the Steam Deck, as it would be the new baseline for what a low-end PC could be at its absolute minimum. Target the Steam Deck and scale your way up. That was my reasoning. But of course, I'm not a game developer, so my thoughts weren't very rooted in reality, and all of this was before I started conversing with developers. So truth be told, I was mostly talking out of my ass for this entire point. Not to mention, game development can take multiple different years. It's very possible that games just weren't being developed with the Steam Deck in mind because the Steam Deck only came out like last year. Another thing I got wrong, the Steam Deck shipping out to other regions within the first year. When the Steam Deck was first announced and released, only people in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Europe could get Steam Decks, not including imports of course. They've since expanded into certain Asian countries, such as Japan, Hong Kong, South Korea, and Taiwan. I totally thought that none of these other regions would be getting Steam Decks until after the first anniversary of the Steam Deck. To be fair though, there are still several regions that don't have access to Steam Decks yet, like Southeast Asia, Oceania, Africa, and Latin America, just to name a few. And I do hope in the future Valve does sell the Steam Deck to these countries, preferably within the year. One other thing I got wrong was the fact that I touted that I would be using my Steam Deck to clear out my backlog. And to be fair, I've tried out a bunch of games in my library that I probably would not have otherwise. I've even cataloged a good portion of my Steam library on YouTube in a series I called Steam Deck Library Check, which I will be restarting soon. And yes, I have beaten some games that have just been sitting in my library for quite some time now. But if I had to be real with you, I think my backlog may have gotten worse. Nowadays, I buy more and more games on Steam than I have before, and my backlog keeps growing. There's no end to this, is there? Cleaning out your backlog requires some true discipline, the will to stop buying new games as they get released. Another thing I got wrong was the SD card experience. Like, yeah, the Nintendo Switch uses SD cards, as does the 3DS, and there's even modifications to let your PS Vita use SD cards as well. But really? Running AAA titles off of your SD card on a full fat PC? Sounds like madness, right? What's even more maddening is just how well it works. Like, seriously. Like, yes, obviously games take long to load on an SD card compared to an SSD. Like, I was expecting the difference between load times to be a difference of minutes, not seconds. Games on SD cards also perform very similarly to games installed on SSDs. I do believe what helps a lot of that is the fact that shader cache is stored on the SSD. Meaning if you download a lot of games onto SD cards, you will still want ample space on your SSD to store all the shader cache and all that cool stuff. Overall, I am still very surprised at the level of performance we're getting by running games off of an SD card, though a lot of that can be attributed to how Steam does shader caching and compatibility data. I don't expect things to be this smooth trying to do this on Windows on deck. And finally, the last thing I got wrong was buying the Steam Deck with the expectation that I would be playing it for a couple of months and then probably just let it collect dust. To this day, I still play games on my Steam Deck. It's still my preferred way of playing games, period. Almost every game I play on PC, I play on my Steam Deck, with the odd exception here or there. You know, the odd exception being Destiny 2. You know, I made a video about how the Steam Deck ruined PC gaming for me, and that's because I'm looking at the future of PC gaming. Yes, it was a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, yes, the Steam Deck is a PC after all, right? I mean, how could it ruin something that it's a part of? It's irrevocably changed how I view PC gaming as a whole. Yes, I'll still be upgrading my gaming PC, I'll still be partaking in custom water cooling, all of that cool stuff. The Steam Deck can never take away the joy of building PCs. But between the Steam Deck's amazingness as well as GPU prices being totally out of control on all fronts, it makes me appreciate that PC gaming is no longer being held back by GPU prices. That it's no longer being held hostage by companies that want to increase GPU prices year after year. No, I'm not spending $1,000 on a 4080. Get the fuck out of here. If you like high-tech lowlife, you should check out the rest of my channel. And if you like the rest of my channel, you should like, subscribe, and spread the good gospel of high-tech lowlife. Furthermore, we have a community Discord server. There's a link in the description down below. Check us out.